On Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Roll call, Alex Coop,
Here.
obviously. Jeffrey Crane,
Here.
Peter Coyne,
Here.
and myself, Ed Getty, as the chairman. We need the approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Could I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. What was the date on that one, Ed?
May 21st.
May 21st, 2025.
Right. Seconded, fine. Any comments, any changes? No. All in favor?
Confirmed.
It's unanimous. Thank you. So I have a little bit of housekeeping to kind of go through and read you on how things are going to go. Obviously, you already know, but I got to do it anyway. So the board may ask questions during each appeal, which we have one appeal for tonight. The board may receive any oral or documentary evidence, but shall exclude any irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence. Each party shall have the right to present his or her case or defense by oral or documentary evidence, to submit rebuttal evidence, and also to conduct such cross-examination as may be required for a full and true disclosure of the facts that we'll be looking at tonight. After the appeal is presented, the board may continue to deliberate or may close the hearing and continue deliberations for up to 60 days from the date of the appeal, or longer if the taxpayer extension of time has been submitted by the appellant. After a decision is reached, the secretary for the board shall issue a written decision for each appeal and send to the appellant, the assessor, and the Cumberland County Commissioners within 10 days. If the board fails to give a written notice of its decision within 60 days of the date the application was filed, and unless the applicant agrees in writing for a further delay, the application is deemed denied, and the applicant may appeal to Superior Court as if there has been any written denial. So you can appeal either way to the Superior Court. So, so tonight we're looking at the 2025.0521, the meeting, and we're talking about 46 Island Pond Road in Harrison, map and lot 59, lot 17, and by Connie Allen. So.
Is it Corinne or Connie?
My name is Corinne, but I go by Connie.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Yeah, because I saw it both ways,
Yep.
so. All right, so if you'd like to go ahead and present your case, we have plenty of documentation, so you can reference anything and add whatever you'd like.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. I don't know your name.
I'm Jessica Westhaver. I work with Parker Appraisals. We're the assessing agents for Harrison.
Good to meet you. My name is Corinne Allen. I live at 46 Island Pond Road, and I have for 36 years. I understand that you're all here as volunteers, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you for being here. The reason to be here is to provide enough information to help you board members decide whether there should be an abatement of $115,600 in the assessment of my property. Before I begin, though, would you like a copy of the information?
I've reviewed it already, so I'm using this as your guide.
Okay.
Yeah.
I brought extras just in case. Anyone else like
We
it?
got it, physical
You
and
have it on
digital.
computer.
Both.
Island Pond neighborhood has its own designation in the assessments. So I invite you to open the blue folder to page 1 under specifics, so you'll do it on your computer. And you'll see the tax map for the town, for 59. Okay.
Oh, that's a tax map, but this is hers. 17.
Excuse me, do you have the blue folder?
I do.
Okay, it's on page 1 if you get it.
My page number's a little different.
I think ours are different than your, the way it's scanned, I think is different than what.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I'm sorry. Okay, would you like a copy of this though? So
Oh,
the-
I got it right here. You go right ahead.
Just trying to make it easy. So I'd like to begin with an overview of Island Pond itself. Island Pond is the only pond in Harrison. It's about 2/3 of a mile long, with an island running about 1/3 of the length of it. It takes less than 10 minutes to ride around the entire pond in a motorized boat. This is a small pond. There's only a small public access, and that's only for boats that can be carried in because there's no ramp. There's no public beach or other facilities that are available at the lakes in Harrison. The water quality is steadily decreasing, unfortunately, sadly, as measured by Lakes Environmental Association. And there have been 2 algal blooms on the lake, not total, but in areas. We've formed a pond association to try to slow down that steady deterioration. These issues that I've just listed contribute to a lack of desirability in the marketplace. Page 6, well, whatever page comes up for you, my appeal provides photos and descriptions of these properties that have been sold, and there's an aerial photo of Island Pond, which I think is helpful in understanding what I'm talking about here. The 2 properties that have been on the market have not sold. One appears to have been priced too high for the pond, and the other is much too good for the pond. This is the 3rd summer that it has been on the market. No doubt if it was on a lake, it would have sold very quickly. It's a lovely home. There are 16 homes surrounding Island Pond, all but one of them, all but one of which have been here for at least 50 years. The exception is the one I just spoke of, this.
Is that the, excuse me, is that the big, the $2 million one? The one?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah. And the last I knew had been marked down to $1.5 million.
right, yep,
That's what I have.
yeah, I got it, oops.
Most of the homes are still owned by the same original families. There have been very few sales on Island Pond since the subdivision was created in 1945, and those 13 lots were all sold by 1956, and my parents bought the last lot. It's difficult to determine market or just values of those properties now when there have been so few sales. The question is, what sales did Parker Appraisal use to decide the base rate for Island Pond should be $250,000 for improved land and $125,000 for unimproved? In a joint letter from Parker Appraisal and Harrison Board of Assessors on page 2, it reads, "To determine a property's value, only the market and what a willing purchaser will pay for the property." And the State of Maine Revenue Service Assessors practice, which they refer to, reads, "Just value has been interpreted by Maine courts as the equivalent of market value." The goal is to ensure assessments reflect current market value. Their joint letter with Harrison Board of Assessors reads, "Exhibit 1 is a chart of sales from 2021 to 2025 that are indicative of the desirability to own waterfront property on Island Pond." I invite you to turn to their exhibits and to Exhibit 1. which looks like this. And you could go through those one by one. You all have them?
I'm using their map with their sales from 2021 to 2025. Are they each reflected on here as well?
Yes.
They are, okay, yep.
Well, okay. It would be helpful, I think if you had, I think I have another copy.
I have the whole packet.
Oh, okay, great.
Page
Okay.
49 in the PDF.
49, okay, thanks.
The first two that are listed are actually one property. And it was not a sale, it was an inheritance. Skipping down to the last one, the fourth one in that first section, that's also inheritance. So again, it's not a sale. Although this is supposedly a list of sales in Harrison. Then skipping back to the third one, it says that it's non-valid because it's in tree growth. Well, it doesn't have to stay in tree growth, as far as I understand. It's the sale price that matters, whether it was in tree growth or otherwise. And it says the bulk of it is in Waterford. Well, in fact, 3 acres are in Waterford, but 8 acres are in Harrison. So my argument's going to be that they really should have used that as one of the bases for their determinations. Okay, moving down to the second section. The first one is, the first one's not an arm's length sale, although they may not have known that. It was sold to the neighbor of 70 years who wanted it badly enough to pay the top price, which was very high because that was at the peak of the COVID bubble. And then the second one is the same thing. It was sold during COVID. And he paid $30,000 above market price, the price that was already much higher than normal.
Is that the Florida couple?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes. And they bought it sight unseen and have been disappointed,
I saw
I'm
that.
sorry to say, yes. The third one is not even on Island Pond or in shoreland zoning. So according to Maine law, it's not supposed to be used. Let me find my listing here, section 3. Maine law reads, in determining just value, property subject to restrictions that restrict the use of the property may not be considered comparable to a property not so restricted. So I don't believe that it should have been on the list at all. Moving down to the third section, he's designated all 3 of them as being out of scope. And I assume that he means because they're in 2015, 14, and 12. However, in the abatement denial letter from the town of Harrison, they reach back to 2006 and use a sale there as one of the reasons to deny my abatement request. And the one from 2006 was not even an arm's length sale either. So some issues here. So here we go. Of these 9 properties that they have listed as sales, 1 is not in shoreland zoning and so shouldn't have been on the list. It's not restricted. Two of them are inheritances. 3, they disallowed because they chose to use a 4-year period of 2021 to 2025, even though assessments were finished in early 2024. And 1 they disallowed because it's partially in an adjoining town, and 2 were when prices were unusually high, and 1 was not even an arm's length sale. So what are we left here with as the basis? What were the land schedules based on? Okay, returning to those 2 sales that are on the Waterford line, that that he indicated was partially in, or he said the bulk of it was in Waterford. These properties have much potential because of having over 300 feet of frontage on Temple Hill Road. And if you look at the tax map, you're gonna see that those properties, okay, I'm gonna turn, and you have the tax maps right there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you'll see at the top left side are two large parcels that I've highlighted in yellow. And you can see that they run between Island Pond and Temple Hill Roads.
This is yellow, this is.
Okay. So one of them has 300 feet of road frontage on Temple Hill and the potential for 6 or more house lots. And the other one has, 380, I believe it is, feet of frontage on Temple Hill Road. It's possible that, given the difficulty it's been to sell property on Island Pond, that those pieces would not even have sold were they not also on Temple Hill Road. Okay. Either way, my contention is they should have been used in the assessments, as a basis in the assessments. So even with the extensive Temple Hill Road frontage and Island Pond Road and water frontage, the prices were only $10,000, $10,790, and $30,000 per acre. If you compare that to 3 other undeveloped lots on Island Pond, that would be 59, 24, 25, 26 down at the bottom of the map. They were assessed at $115,000 per acre, even with 1/2 to 1/3 of the shore frontage. Okay. Compare also to most all the other land on Island Pond, including the lots right next to it that are assessed at $200,000, around $200,000 for an acre. So from $30,000 sale price, which, to $200,000. Even though one of these was sold in 2023, when the assessments were being done, the assessor did not use either of these sales in his assessments. They are on Island Pond. They're an indicator of Island Pond land value at the time the assessments were being done. Although it is skewed because, again, they have this income potential from being also on Temple Hill. So they're really worth, in terms of Island Pond properties, worth less than they sold for. So we're still trying to determine what the Island Pond land schedules were based on. They do not appear to be grounded at all with market information. In fact, they seem to be at odds with the marketplace. Do you have any questions at this point? Is that okay if for me to ask this way?
Where's your subject property? And where it says Allen?
The one that said Allen's?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to get to that too. The joint letter from Parker Appraisal and Harrison Board of Assessors states the rate of 20% they use to indicate sale price increase year to year was according to market trends. I'd like to distribute these. 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's down front. Thank you so much.
It's included in the packet you submitted, I haven't seen it.
No, it's going to come around to you, so you'll have it.
Thank you.
We don't typically review items that weren't presented in the packet.
Well, I called ahead and asked her if it was okay, and I was told it was, but maybe that's not, if that's not correct, then turn it over and don't look at it. I mean, I don't know what to say. I assumed you could see it.
As
But
long
I
as
can-
everybody has a copy of it, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Unless, Jessica, did you get a copy of?
I have a copy now.
Okay. Do you have any objection to look at whatever it is? All right,
Okay.
go ahead.
As I'm sure all of you know, depending on the source of information, there are variations in the HPI. I used two sources. One was the Federal Housing Finance Agency. I've written down right here. It'll come to me what the other source was, but nevertheless, what I've done is to go through the 4 years from 2020 through 2024. And I've highlighted, although it didn't didn't copy in colors, but so it's gray, but the median price, sale price increase, both Cumberland and Oxford County. Now, on the front page, I've summarized that by year, just to give you a quick visual. And as you can see, it went much higher in 2020, it was much higher in 2021. Oxford County was 20%, for example, and then dropped back by 2024. And by this year, 2025, Cumberland County, according to this, was underwater in terms of sale price increase. Any questions?
No,
Okay. Okay, so the reason that I did this is in the exhibit over here, he uses a 20% for an increase year by year. And yet, the HPI is not nearly that, other than in 2021. So the increases that he shows here clearly are not according to market trends.
Is this data exclusive to waterfronts?
No, these are not. These are the county as a whole.
everything.
So as you know, the property in southern Cumberland County is going to be very different.
If these aren't only waterfronts, was the 20% that the town of Harrison was suggesting in the letter waterfronts only? Were those only waterfronts?
He did, I don't believe he specified, just simply that on the exhibit, okay, right here, on the exhibit, it says 20%. Oh, no, he did say that it was according to current market trends. But let me go back to it.
Well, I mean, he's still doing 20% year after year on this thing. Or
Yes.
Whoever was the author of this chart. Still, whether they said it or not, it's on the chart.
Yes, it is. Well,
The
this,
math is 20.
I guess the question is, for the 20%, is that specific to these types of properties that meet this certain criteria in Harrison, or if this is a macro view of the county, so it's unclear if we're comparing apples to apples?
She's just nailing down the consistency of what the town's saying, using their data for, and showing that the market is not 20% every year.
Yeah.
Which we know that.
Right.
But if the market in Harrison waterfront is 20 each year,
no.
it's not, I mean, it's,
It's kind of like a dead zone for sales. There's not much sales. The town didn't have many sales to go by for this 16-house pond.
which is
Well,
the
that's why-
only, which
that's
is the only
why-
waterfront in Harrison, is that right?
No.
It's the only pond in
Only
Harrison.
pond in Harrison, okay.
Yes. The lakes are viewed totally differently. Okay, now if you could turn to Exhibit 3, please. And it looks like this. This is labeled comparison chart for land and buildings. And the first column is my property, and then there are 5 others that are being compared to it.
I don't want to interrupt, I just wanted to note on this chart, at the very bottom under subject property, the total assessment didn't calculate properly, so just know that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that was gonna be one of my points, so thank you for saying it first.
Page 60.
60, thanks.
All right, I got it.
Okay, well, as I said, the first column is my property, and then there are 5 others. And at the top, it says total acreage. That's correct, at .62. And then frontage, it lists 200 feet of frontage. But if you turn to the next page, the valuation report, the number of feet frontage is listed as 125. So I don't-
Which is it?
That might just be a typo, I don't,
The 200 is listed in 2 places, and the 125 is listed in 2 places. I've never had 200 feet of frontage.
I can't read.
It's short feet in the
it.
top table, the valuation report, reference 1, reference 2, short feet frontage, top left corner of the 3B, page 1.
I think that's a typo.
So the table shows 200, and the table was, who created this table?
I created the table,
Okay,
so
so
that
probably
that
it's a
200
typo.
feet for her property should be 125.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we can just view it as 125, because the calculation's still in this, the calculation data would be derived from the assessment card.
Correct.
And then the total assessment at the bottom, as she's already pointed out, reads 197,800, and that's not correct. It's actually 315,600. So this was provided as a comparison chart, and yet those errors make it very misleading, unless you go into the next pages and notice that that there are errors.
thank you, oh, thank you.
Okay, also, when you go into these pages, you'll see in the middle of the page, under land description, the price unit. I couldn't understand why there was such a wide variation in the price unit, so I made a short chart. It's okay if I distribute these. And I you'll see there's there's exhibit name, tax map, number, acre, frontage, and price unit. Dropping back down to the second one, that has 1/3 of an acre, 100 feet of frontage, and it says the price unit's $497,000. It has no indoor plumbing or well. The one just below that has twice as much acreage, twice as much frontage, and it's about half the price unit. Maybe that could be explained later then, because I don't get this. And as you can see, they also have put that same property in there that's not in shoreland zoning and not on Island Pond, and therefore should not be on the list. So concerning shoreland zoning, Maine law mandates that assessors take into account all relevant factors, including, without limitation, the effect upon value of any enforceable restrictions to which the use of the land may be subjected, including zoning restrictions. However, Parker Appraisal's letter, page 2, reads, certain factors are not considered when evaluating properties. Examples would include property located within shoreline zone. Well, why didn't Parker Appraiser factor in the zoning? The main law requires it. So another question that maybe we can get an answer to. But certainly that affects the value of the property when it's in shoreline zoning. There are a lot of limitations. In summary, there have been few valid sales on Island Ponds in 50 years, and Parker Appraisal has dismissed almost all of them. Therefore, the 2 valid sales near the Waterford line should be used, and the 2 sales that were sold above normal market could be used by subtracting the high HPI and the excess he paid in a bidding war, and we could arrive at a reasonable basis. Technically, I don't know how that works, and just seems to me that that's a possibility. Okay, so given the small size of the pond, the deteriorating condition of it, the inability to sell developed properties on it, the lack of market demand for land on the pond, and the sale price of land that did sell, it seems to me a more reasonable base rate would be closer to the rate for land along Crooked River, whose base rate are $100,000 for developed and 50. Island Pond's rate are 2.5 times that at $250 and $125. Land next to the water is generally more valuable than not. The question is this water worth that much? That's partly what we're here to decide. Yet to develop land is assessed at a lower rate than developed land. However, the difference between the sale prices of $10,790 and $30,000 per acre of those properties near the Waterford line, and the Island Pond assessment rate of $125,000 for undeveloped acreage, it's just not reasonable. That's more than 3 times as much. Any questions at this point? Before I explain why, in my opinion, the assessment of my individual property is too high. Okay. On the tax map on page 1, you will see my pie-shaped property sandwiched in between 2 larger pieces. And lots on the left, lots 15 and 16 are one parcel. That's one family that have always owned that. Okay, if you could, again, you don't have the same page as I do, but if you could turn to my chart entitled Island Pond Land Assessments.
Is it this one?
That's correct. Okay, the 4th one down is my property, number 17. And you see there's 0.62 acres and 125 feet of frontage. Now, if you go up above to Turner, number 18, he has twice as much acreage and 30 feet more frontage than I have. But when you go over here to what we've been assessed, you see that we're assessed very similarly. 197, almost 198 to 206. And then you drop down to the one below, that's 15 and 16. And again, it's twice as much property, almost twice as much frontage, and it's only $34,000 more. It's not equitable. My property is much smaller. And as to usable land, it's very much smaller. Assessors are required to consider topography, but don't appear to have done so. There's a steep incline to reach the pond, okay, requiring stairs. In addition, the east side of Temple Hill is close behind my house, causing a water runoff ditch that runs across my backyard, down the side, through a culvert under the road and to the pond. It floods when there's heavy rain. Floods my backyard, floods my side yard, floods the road, floods part of my driveway. 2 years ago, the road foreman offered to replace the road culvert with a larger one, which would alleviate some of the issue. Unfortunately, he's moved on, and I've since been told that they're not going to do it. So the next time I have a torrential rain, my yard's flooded again. Only about 1/2 of my small acreage is usable. Parker's appraisal's letter on page 4 reads, "The subject property received fair and equitable treatment relative to other properties on Island Pond." This is not useful because in addition to the issues that I have just addressed, there's little or no valid sales data for the base rate on which we were all assessed. The sales just aren't there that they've used. They're consistently applying a base rate that is inconsistent with the market. It's not based on market data. Any questions about this? Okay, in conclusion, folks, in their defense tonight, they may try to assert that I've not proven the value of my property. And that may be partly true, but not for lack of trying. 1, I provided several real estate listings with which to compare my property. Because there's no other pond in Harrison, by necessity, they were on ponds in other towns. They were dismissed because there are other towns. I provided the sales information of 2 land sales near the Waterford line that we've been talking about. They dismissed them, saying they were out of town, even though 2/3 of one is in Harrison. And Maine state regulations suggest the use of sales in other towns when there's a insufficient number within the town. 3, I listed 3 other sales on Island Pond, but they said 2015, 2014, and 2012 were too old. But again, the Harrison Board of Assessors used a 2006 sale as a reason to deny my abatement request. 4, it appears the only sales they will consider were the 2 sales in 2021 at the peak of the housing frenzy, which in addition to being overvalued is not a sufficient number of sales to base assessments on, according to assessment regulations. Of the 2 sales, although they may not have known this, 1 was not even an arm's length sale. And the other sale was $30,000 above asking price that was already abnormally high. And number 5, I did not hire an appraiser because the ones I've talked with say they would have run into the same issues that I've addressed here and a lack of sales to base their appraisal on. So the Parker Appraisal has left me with no choice but to come here and take your time and ask you to decide. So here we are.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
Did someone at the town or someone at Parker Appraisal suggest that you get an appraisal done?
Not that I recall.
Okay, I just want to make sure. It's not required. You don't need to.
I don't, if they did, I don't recall them
Okay.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, the same issue is, if they're not going to accept the sales, I mean.
No, I just wanted to be clear, we don't require an appraisal
No, I
here, and they can't require one either. So just want to be clear that you don't need to spend money on appraisal if you can provide data.
Well, I've provided what I can, and I would like to see Parker Appraisal adjust the Island Pond base rates to reflect actual market value on Island Pond. That will correct much of the overvaluing of my property and all the others. Either way, I am respectfully requesting an abatement of $115,600 to bring my total assessment more in line with the actual value of property on Island Pond. Thank you for your time and attention.
Well, thank you very much, Claudia. What we're gonna do next is if there's any questions from the board to you, and if not, we're gonna move over to Jessica. We're gonna let her present their defense.
Yes?
And then when she's done, you can ask questions also of her, and so can the board. And we'll kind of try to go back and forth, but I want to give her an opportunity to kind of go through her rationale, why she's saying what she's saying. Okay?
Yeah.
Might help answer some questions for you. Okay?
Go now? Sure.
Go ahead. You're it.
So, correct, Peter, we don't ever ask a taxpayer to get an appraisal.
Okay.
What we ask is that if they have information we ask how they've come up with their information. That's all we ask. If somebody says that they know what the value of your property is, we need to know, if there's information out there that we weren't able to collect. We don't specify anything. Half the time, we don't take appraisals because we can't, because it says right in the appraisal report, this is not an assessment. It's done for private purposes only, so we have to be very careful with using anything like that. But what I wanted to kind of back up to is some of the information that just this document submitted right here. I know that there was a recent news article that came out in the Portland Press Herald that said, state of Maine sales for the month of May were up by 5%. So I think the market right now is kind of crazy. Nobody knows what it's doing. So I just think this is just a snapshot of a certain type of information, but nonetheless, it's there. But ultimately, we don't have anything telling us what your property is worth. We don't have any information submitted to us saying, this is what I could sell my house for, or this is, what it's worth. So we have to take our best estimate with the information that we have available. I'm gonna start with the properties listed and why we can't use them, the tree growth property. You're saying that we can't use that property that was sold that's back off the water because it doesn't have the same restrictions. Well, the tree growth property has restrictions, as I'm sure everybody's aware. It has building restrictions. You can't build on a tree growth property unless you take it out of tree growth. And that tree growth penalty, especially for a waterfront property, would be massive. So the marketability of a property that's in tree growth is going to change based on what that person can or cannot do with it. If the seller takes it out prior to the sale, that's gonna change, obviously, the value of the property, because that buyer doesn't have to pay that penalty to withdraw it. So we have to look at what the current use is of that land before we use it as an arm's length transaction. So 118,000 or whatever it sold for, I don't have that right here, but yes, it was a good transaction for a tree growth property. If that weren't in tree growth, we would expect probably to see a much for 3,000 feet. But again, we also can't use it because it's half in Waterford, half in this town, and we have to be careful about, piecing and mismatching and taking pieces of sales and not pieces of other sales. So we don't take anything from other towns when we have ample sales. This section right here, correct, we don't have a ton of properties that sold, so we had to take the information that we had available to us on the properties that did sell. One thing I want to make clear too is that I think what gets lost in translation with assessing is the per acre value. The per acre value isn't just your assessment divided out by your acreage. That's not how an assessment of land is done. An assessment of land, if it's not waterfront, is done by your first base acre, is your most highest acre. And then as you get to rear land, wasteland, it all has different values per acre. So it's not gonna be a straight calculation to figure out a per acre value. So if you have a much larger property, if you had a 100-acre property that, you know, obviously has 99 acres of that property not developed, it's gonna have a much different per acre value if you divide it by its assessment. In addition, with waterfront properties, waterfront properties are calculated with two methods. The rear acreage, which I kind of just described, but the base acre is based on the water frontage and the depth of the lot. So if you have a property that's 3,000 feet of water frontage and it meets the minimum depth of 150 feet, that area is considered your base acre. So if you have a waterfront property that's 150 feet, or you have a property that's 200 feet, you then have to times it by its depth. And our average depth, if the property goes like 200 feet, we're only gonna take the first 150 feet of depth of that property and call it waterfront. So to calculate the acreage of the base acre in waterfront and then the assessment of the rear acreage, that's what, I don't know if you saw on exhibit, there's a chart in here. Exhibit I hold through it. I think it's 2B possibly. Yes, 2B. So 2B really shows you the breakdown of the waterfront assessment with the water frontage, the size of the lot, the acreage, and then the difference in between. So if there's additional acreage in addition to what we're calling that base acre.
So what's blue, the base acre?
So the blue is, bear with me here. Blue is the total acreage,
Okay.
I think. Hold on, I might have that. No. Blue is the water frontage, and then the green at the top is the full property.
Okay.
So the blue shows you on the bottom, okay, so the first one is 100 feet of water frontage. So we have, and the whole parcel is only 0.39 acres. So because based on 100 feet and the depth of 150 feet, that whole parcel has to go as water frontage because it doesn't go anywhere else, it's small. And as you go through these properties, you'll see the next one's 230 feet of frontage. So 0.46 acres of that lot is considered water frontage, so it's calculated by that water frontage value. And same thing on the top, because it's less than the calculation of the front foot versus the depth. Where you start to deviate from that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 6, and 7, those have less frontage versus depth, so they have more rear acreage in their property. And then you'll also see that in the very last one that has 230 feet of frontage. 1.25 acres of that is considered waterfront, and then the rear acreage is the acreage that is out of waterfront is the 0.20. So that shows you that additional acreage calculation. It's only 1,200 for the acreage, the 0.2 acres. And I know that doesn't make, I'm not explaining it as clearly as I can, but it's not a straight calculation of 1 acre equals 250,000. You've gotta calculate the amount of foot frontage, the depth of the lot, and how many total acres it has in general. And this kind of shows you, based on all of these breakdowns, how we assess them and how they came out to similar for their waterfront portion based on their foot frontage.
Excuse me. Here I'm shown as having 200 feet of frontage again, and that's not correct.
Again, this was all pulled from the same chart. That's why it pre-populated from that same chart. The property cards were calculated based on the information. This was just a data entry area for these spread charts. So that is how, you know, we break down the waterfront values. As far as the list of sales, the chart that has the list of sales,
Could I interrupt you for just a moment?
yeah, sure.
I don't. See, you're lot 17 with 125 feet of frontage.
That's correct.
And lot 16-15, Quayleys, is 230 feet of frontage, 105 feet more than you. But your assessed difference is only $34,000.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure where we're at.
You're at, right?
Yes, that's right.
What are you comparing it to?
Lot 15-16,
Different chart, we're looking at this one, Jessica, this one
I'm
here.
just curious how what you just showed us translates into what these assessed values are with the next door neighbor. I don't think that works.
Well,
Which,
it depends on what a price per foot adjustment is.
Yeah, so it's lot 15-16, the merge, it looks like they're merged lots,
Yeah.
15-16, with 230 feet of frontage. And you're presumably using 150 feet of the first amount of depth, is that right? Plus the back lot?
correct, so once you have, so the standard depth is 200, not the depth, the standard depth is 150 feet. The standard waterfront footage is 200. Once you go over 200 feet, you then use an excess water frontage foot. So a standard 1 acre lot is 200 feet of water frontage and 150 feet of depth of the lot. That is your standard $250,000 acre. If, once you start deviating from that, so if you go over 200 feet of water frontage, you have that base acre, and then you go past that to have your excess water frontage. And we have a whole excess water frontage chart that values that excess, you know, whatever the excess water frontage is at a different rate than the main 200 feet. So it's not a clear-cut calculation. And what the standard that we use for excess frontage and lot depth and water frontage is not something that we've created. This is a standard assessing practice that all assessors use with excess frontage or, you know, and I've told you in previous meetings, the 20% that we use for the sales, we all, as an assessing group in the entire state, have come together and all made sure that we were using the same models to make sure that we're all on the same page and using the same data as we can to help each other come up with these values. So that 20% that we use is something that we've all together throughout the entire state have figured out based on like the market during COVID. So the way we're calculating these is not a new method that we've established. This is a standard assessing practice.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Does that price per acre change based on the neighborhood? Like,
Does
like Long Lake would have a different price per acre?
Long Lake's gonna have a different per acre value. Each body of water in Harrison or any place for that matter is gonna have a different per acre value. But all of their rear acreage value, so anything above that base acre, uses all of the same per acre value.
Now, due to her pie-shaped lot, is her lot discredited, disvalued for the pie-shaped rear, the depth?
You mean
rear-
like the shape
The rear
and,
acreage portion, is it
let me look at her
reduced?
valuation report. So yes, we give her a 10% discount for the fact that it has the shape of the lot.
Okay. And I'm just scrolling up to that card.
Want me to continue or?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So also with the sales information, correct, we didn't have a ton of sales to go by in that area, but, the chart, I was gonna go back to, showing you the sales. So what that report is showing you, so this is Exhibit 1A. What this chart is a download directly from Maine Revenue Services, their transfer tax declaration page. The only thing that's manipulated on this are the columns that say notes and to the right. And it's purely just information that we collect from the town and other information that's included on those transfer tax forms. So the top 4 transactions, three of them were no dollar amount traded hands, so we can't use those. And then that $118,750, that was the tree growth property that we can't use because it's treated differently than her property. We can't compare it. And we just don't use that. We don't use any tree growth sales in our factoring because the numbers are set by Maine Revenue Services. There's a per acre value for tree growth, and it's like $300 per acre or $279. It depends on what kind of tree growth it's in, but we have to use state set values for those, so we can't compare that information. The 3 sales that are listed on there are really just kind of showing you what they sold for and how we marked them up to kind of figure out where we should be in line. Does that mean our current assessment is exactly to what those 20% increases are? No. It just kind of gives us a good visual as to where we think we want to be when we have our overall values set. And the bottom 3 properties are really just, again, they were too far out of scope. 2015, I mean, anything 2020 and back is out of scope because it just isn't gonna compare to the current market. So we had to take those out. We just added these chart of 20% increases just to kind of give some kind of visual as to if we were going to use that same methodology on those sales, where would we be? But we didn't use any of that data on those 3 bottom sales listed in any of our calculations. This was just purely for, this is the information on the sales that were presented. We can't use these, but if we were to use these, this is where we would have them kind of fall. To go back to just value, yes, just value is an interpretation of market value. But the other thing is we also have to keep in mind while we're doing this that we have to do things fairly and equitably, because what we're essentially doing is trying to help the town figure out what percentage of the overall value each property is worth. And when doing that, looking at a year-round property that sits on a beautiful pond, and calculating our values and looking at the sales that we had, I mean, the $175,000 sale for a much smaller lot back in '21, we believe that our values were fair. We thought value for your property that we came up with of $315,000 for a year-round home sitting on a lake or a pond, was fair and equitable. And we don't have anything to tell us that it's not.
The property you just mentioned that sold for $175,000, that was not an arm's length sale. That was, as I explained to you earlier, neighbors for 7 years. They wanted that property and they paid the asking price.
That's an arm's length transaction. That's not, I don't think I would ever throw a sale like that out of the window. Like, a sale that maybe they were like, hey, we're neighbors, can we pay $50,000 for it? That's something that we would consider like a related parties or, but somebody that's paying the asking or above asking price is a marketable sale, like that they're willing to pay what they're putting it on the market for. So that's not something we can discard.
All right,
Any questions?
I'm sure we have lots of questions. Who wants to go first?
Just a side note, no brokerage fees are paid on the 175.
Well,
It's a little different too. But I'd say it's arm's length. But just to kind of where I'm at with it, I don't like seeing the 20% every year on that grid.
That's not values, just to be clear, that's not values. We don't just go in and say 20% this year, 20% this year. We use that as a point to kind of adjust our cost schedules when we're looking at how we need to get to our sales. And how we use that is during the last 5 years, there have been many properties that have changed hands more than once. And we have to look on the average of those transactions. Okay, somebody bought a house in 2021 and then they sold it in 2023. What was the change? Like so based on all of the collective data and all of the collective information that we've gotten from all of the assessors that deal with all of the sales, is any property that did a double sale, change hands twice during the COVID period, which was many, it was an average of 20% for those years. I'm not saying it's a hard, steady, fast 20%, but that is what we've seen with the double sales that have happened during COVID. Just to clarify where that came from.
Like,
I don't have any questions.
Just, I'm going back to I guess we're considering this an overvaluation appeal, right? Not an unjust discrimination appeal, like two similarly situated properties differently valued. But if it's an overvaluation appeal, statute allows you to be off by 10%.
Correct.
So, Connie, I would ask, do you think your house, as it sits, on its lot as it sits, would sell for $284?
No.
You think it would be less?
Not on the property that I'm on, no. I mean, I just explained all the issues, the size and the inability to use most of it.
I don't mean the property, I mean the home and the
The
land,
building.
The whole package.
the whole package.
Yes, the whole package. I'm just saying, no, I don't think I would be able to get that. That's why I asked that the assessment be, the abatement, be 200,000 when we're done, yes.
200,000 for a waterfront year-round home.
But the issue is, yes, it's on the waterfront. But so aren't the properties in town that are on Crooked River. That's waterfront. And the water's much cleaner than it is in Island Pond, by the way. And they're assessed, their basic rates are 100,000 developed, 50 undeveloped. And I think that this should be treated closer to that than 250 and 125. Okay,
So-
which is 2.5 times what Crooked River property is on the water.
What are the base rates on Long Lake?
On Long Lake, I
Yeah.
think the base acre was
Is
800,000.
it 8? Okay, so there's,
Yeah, way different.
Yeah, yeah. I can't answer to Crooked Lake right now because I haven't looked at it in a while, so I don't. All I know is the values we've set are based off the sales that are on Crooked River, so I can't speak to that right now. I don't.
we look at an entire valuation when we do an abatement, so you can say the land is this. And we've run into this with Harrison before, with their land versus their structure evaluations, it's always Harrison. But we have to look at the entire valuation, not just land specifically. And so but I think for me, I'm looking at would the entire valuation be fair? And be within the 10% allowed by statute?
Well, I don't think it is, I mean, based on the things that I've just told you. The other thing I didn't even mention, I talked about the flooding that could be corrected if the town it wouldn't be corrected, but it would be ameliorated if they changed the size of the culvert. The other two properties on both sides of me aren't dealing with flooding at all. It's only on my property.
Well, that is my concern. I've been waiting for my turn.
Okay, go ahead.
I think there should be some sort of adjustment for her problem with specifically for that flooding on that land, of some adjustment. I mean, why wouldn't we make some adjustment for that? Value would equate to some adjustment there. And I would just appeal to you, Jessica, is, how do you make adjustments for that? Would you consider that where the basis needs to be, I think, adjusted versus just a straight line of what you're doing, okay? You made, what, 10% because it's a pie shape, I get that. Okay, that makes sense, I like that. But we need to go a little bit more, I think is where I'm coming from. I also have to take exception, but I guess I could be convinced maybe that you're right, that just because it's in tree growth, that it can't be considered and has a whole different value. I disagree with that. And I sell real estate for 40 years, and I've sold a lot of land that's on tree growth. Yeah, there's a penalty if you take it out, okay? But we're not devaluing that whole piece of land because it's in tree growth, okay? That just doesn't happen. Now, the assessment rules you guys have, you may dance to a different tune, but it sure as hell isn't the market. And we don't do that, okay? So I kind of, am on her side on that part to say, I would have used that as a comp, okay? No question. So that's just my experience and my opinion. And, I can, kind of slide on that a bit. But it takes me back though, of that flooding of her property, of that use. That's gotta be considered. I mean, there has to be some factor. Hopefully you do that from time to time when you go look at the property, say, Jesus, half this thing they can't even use. So that's my opinion.
So what I will, not counter to that, but because I don't have her property file in front of me, I am not sure if that's something we were aware of. Because
Right.
unless
Okay.
that's filed in the file or the code enforcement officer tells us that information, and it's not flooded when we go there, that's not information we know. And we can't use that to change the value if it's something we don't know about.
Right.
Yeah, so
Today.
what I would say to that is, if that's information that be provided, then yes, we need to go there and look at the property, look at the file records to see if that's a hindrance on the property and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
There could very well be something that we need to adjust, but I don't have that information, I didn't have that information when we made that assessment.
Yes.
So we need to maybe go and put you on our checklist to go and look at that, talk to the town. I'm not sure who you spoke with at the time, you said the foreman, I don't know who.
He's gone now with all
Okay,
that.
so
He left.
I can't speak to somebody that's not there, I don't know what's going on with that property. And if that's not something that other people in the town office know, I can't use that information without knowing it.
Well,
So,
The
And I'm
person
also-
working with him is now doing the grading, and he said, he's the one who told me, no, they've decided not to change the culvert. He heard the other one tell
Well,
me.
it is what it is all,
Yes.
is all we can look at. Not what the town's promising or what they promised before and what they're gonna do. We wanna look at the property the way it is right now, okay? Is a lot of it not usable at different times, for what reasons? That's what they need to know. And knowing this, it just makes sense that you go back and say, well, we need another adjustment
Yeah.
here, somewhere.
Yeah.
That's just where I've been coming from. Because I studied all this all afternoon, looking at this, thinking, Jesus, there has to be some more adjustments here somewhere, if we knew about it. And sometimes you just don't know. I mean, so anyways, that's my opinion. We welcome yours, like they say.
I guess what type of adjustment would happen for that if you found it was not usable because of the seasonal flooding or what have you?
this is where Beth's judgment comes into play. It would really be based on, what impact this has on it. Now, does it happen multiple times a year and she can't get to the house? Or is it just runoff that's running down one side and just kind of making, is it ruining her foundation? Like, there'd be so many different things that we'd have to look at before we can say, this is making a very big impact, this is making a small impact. So this is where the judgment comes into play, where I myself wouldn't make this decision alone. My other assessors and I would come together and really be like, okay, are there other properties in town that are affected by the same issue? If so, how did we treat them? And we need to make sure that we're treating them the same. So we'd really have to do some research before I can just throw out and say, we're gonna give it a 20% discount. It really, really depends, and we wanna make sure that if there are other properties in town having that issue, that we're treating them all the same way, because they should all get the same, variance or discount.
Connie, how would you feel about the board moving the table so that they can do more research and circle back with you?
It's been a long process. I have a couple more things to address before I answer that question, if that's all right.
With these, go ahead.
Okay, you said that you're looking at the market now, the 2025. The assessments were done on Island Pond in 2023.
We're not looking at anything, we're done with our reevaluation, we're not looking at anything now.
But when you started speaking, you were talking about the market now in 2025, that it had gone up again.
I was referencing your spreadsheet where you listed a 25%, and I was just countering that with the results of report saying that sales are up 5%. So I was just countering documentation you submitted.
Okay, I won't get into that. Okay. The tree growth thing. I agree. It can be taken out of tree growth. I talked with the owner, we're all friends of, that Island Pond community. He put it in tree growth after he bought it. He said that he had discussions about whether he should do that because he knew that when it came out, there would be a major penalty. But he put it in tree growth. My understanding was it was not in tree growth when he bought it.
I have it in here somewhere, it's been in tree growth for many years.
I saw
So he
that.
probably put it in tree growth for a tax reduction.
After he bought it.
Yeah.
Now, I saw it somewhere there that said that it had been in tree growth for years, but not according to the owner, not according to Brian.
It's been in tree growth since 2015. I researched that because I went back to the town office to look at the tree growth applications, and there's been one on file since 2015.
Well, I don't know if it was taken out before the sale went through.
It wasn't.
Well, I don't know. All I know is what he told me, that he put it in tree growth, because he had a lot of discussion about that's what makes sense. But the other thing is, on those two properties, you said that because it was in tree growth, it sold for around $110,000, but if it hadn't been in tree growth, it would have been more valuable. Well, the piece right next to it was 11 acres, and it sold for almost the same thing. Now, 2 or 3 years later, it sold for double that, but not, where's my chart? But they both sold for about the same price in 2020. And the other one is not in tree growth. So,
What property are you talking about?
okay, I'm gonna go back to it here. Okay. On the tax map, these two I've highlighted in yellow. They
Yeah.
both sold around the same time, a couple of months or close to the same time, in 2020. And they both sold for, one sold for 118 and the other sold for 110. They sold for 3 months apart. Okay. Now, the second.
And then it sold again in '23 for $260,000.
That's correct.
Shows a substantial increase.
That's right.
Which
Yes.
supports the 20%.
That was during that COVID market.
Doesn't matter.
No, but what I'm saying is, there was a major increase, and yes, that was a very good investment for them. They bought it for 110, sold it for 260, and kept back 3 acres. But that still breaks down to only $30,000 an acre. But it still should be considered, and they both were originally sold. Okay, again, I lost my place here for a minute. The point I'm trying to make is, what you said was, the first one would be worth a lot more if it hadn't been in tree growth. And yet, the property right next to it is the same size and sold for just a little bit less. And the second one even has more road frontage on Temple Hill. I think it is, and regardless of whether it's tree growth, I think those are accurate prices for the, because they're very similar.
So, the only thing I'm gonna say to that is that if you're looking at the parcel, the top parcel that sold for 110 in 2020, and then sold for 260 3 years later, one can also assume that the parcel below it that's in Harrison would now be worth close to 280,000.
No, not necessarily.
Why? I
That's
don't
what we're
understand
saying.
your methodology because it, you know, we have to look at the market and if this, and then it's not a direct correlation, there's negotiations and stuff, but, you know, based on the data we're looking at,
But even if it was 280 in Harrison, that still gives you a base that could have been used in determining the base rates on Island Pond. Because that breaks down to $30,000 per acre. It shouldn't be used totally because, again, it has all that frontage on Temple Hill and how much that's valued. The fact that there's land on Island Pond might not have been of any value. They may have just bought it because they have,
but I can't assess based on
I know
shoulda,
you can't.
coulda,
I know you
what
can't.
ifs, I can't.
but you can use at the most, the 260,000, which is 30,000 per acre as a base. That's my opinion. Okay.
There's a standard
Also-
process when you file a transfer tax form online and when the assessors in the town office follow a process is that main revenue has current land use, tree growth, open space, working waterfront, farmland as a classification as to say that it is not a valid sale. We have to go by main revenue standards, classify this as a current land use program, and that's why we cannot use it. I just wanna make that clear, that that's not something we're making up. That is something that Maine Revenue Services has stated that it is a current land use program, therefore it's not considered a valid sale when you look at transfer tax documents and sale information.
Okay, that still leaves the second parcel there. That sold $30,000 an acre the second time. The other issue that I want to address is going back to rear land base area and rear air. When you look at my property and the two next to it, we all have the same depth. So I still don't understand how mine has been assessed almost the same as those.
She seems to give you a 10% discount.
Well, if the 10%, yeah, that 10% back, it'd be even more than what the other one was charged.
Right.
It doesn't, there's a very big difference between my property and the property on each side of mine. And yet, the assessment is very similar. I don't see that it's equitable. Both properties have full use of their property. They don't have any ditch running across their property. Neither one of them do. Mine does.
I think Ed makes a good point, like it gives us an opportunity to maybe take a pause on it, to have that assessed and see what the implications of that are, what effect it has on the valuation. That might be the best route, because otherwise it's a good systematic approach that they've taken in the overall assessment, I feel. That's where I'm going. But that component hasn't been assessed, and I think it's an important consideration.
It still brings us back to the question of how did they arrive at 250,000 as a base rate with sub-fuel sales, with really only one sale that's actually valid? Because they won't accept, I mean, you just said you're not going to accept those two at the Waterford line. So what are you left with? how did you determine $250,000 as a base rate?
We have 4 sales in that area that are, well, technically really 3, that just give us the information that we
Which three are you
used,
talking
and then it's on our map that we submitted. So it was for lot 24 and 24A, which was a combined sale. Lot 7, well, yes, it's not a waterfront property, but it's in the same neighborhood, so it's showing us that off of the water, somebody's willing to pay $220,000 for a property.
For a piece of land or for a development?
It's developed. It's similar, it's a developed land like hers is, but it's just not on the water. And then the other property that's smaller, that sold for 175 in 2021, those are the sales we have. So, you know, using our increase factor, using, you know, what seems to be a standard, like a favorable and semi-accurate based on what we have for information, rate for a property on waterfront. When we reviewed our sales and data information, the value we came up with your property seemed current for the market. It felt like, you know, based on all of the information we have, all of the sales that we have, all of the information we have from all the towns we work in, you know, a 300 and, I can't remember again what your property total worth is, but it just felt like we were right in line with your assessment for the area and the qualities that it had. So we had to use the sales that we had to make our best judgment.
Again, the only sales that you used are the ones that were at the very top of the market.
That were
And you're not,
available to us.
and you're supposed to adjust down according to Maine regulations. Maine law says you're supposed to factor that in.
Factor what in?
The fact that they were above market, they were overvalued. I mean, the rules say if it's overpriced or underpriced, that has to be factored in. And those are the only two that the only two that you wanted to use when there were some other choices, but not many other choices because it's Island Pond. And we've had property for sale that doesn't sell. It's a pond, it's, you know, people want to be on a lake, but they don't care about Island Pond. Which is gonna be sad if I ever want to sell my property, but.
Well, I have, you know, I, like I said, I have concerns with the total assessed value right now. I have also a problem with what you think it should be, I think is too low, okay? There's some number in between there that you probably are at, okay? And what that is, I'm not prepared to answer that, because I don't know the topography of that land and how restrictive that, the limits are of that drainage, what floods and whatever. And I just went through huge legislation for flood and disclosures for the whole last year, okay? So believe you me, the state of Maine is very concerned with any land that floods even a little bit, okay? So that needs to be, I think, looked at. You know, so that's kind of where I am. I'm kind of in there, and I would certainly like what Peter mentioned, to consider to pause this and have another look and come back to the board, okay? And let us look at it when we have some more information, because you know, you're probably not gonna get the right answer that you're hoping for today, okay? Based on what we only know, only what they know, okay? And anyways, that's kind of where I am.
I'm willing to make a motion to table if it's something that, with my understanding is that the offer from the assessors agent was that they would take a closer look at the flooding issue on your property to add another factor that would.
So I would say, because I'm not a flood expert and I'm not a drainage expert, is that we will take a look at the property files and the information the town has. We will visit the property to see what impact that has on the structures in the property, the use of the property. And then, yeah, have a discussion about if there's something that needs to be done.
It's not affecting the building. It's affecting the land. We are.
Well, I think what Ed was saying was even flooding on land affects land value, so.
Yes, it does. It does. I'm still not satisfied with how they arrived at 250,000. I think it's much too
Well,
high.
This is up to you here today too. If you don't want us to pause and take this other look, we can make a decision today, okay? Believe you me, that we can make decisions. But we're trying to see if we can do this as fairly as we can for both you and the assessing company. So everybody feels like at least we took everything into consideration. That's kind of where I think we are. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I would
To you?
I would second, yeah.
So
If
you-
we have a motion to do it, are you open to that suggestion, or are you
What does
looking
that
for a
mean?
vote?
What does it mean if we table it for her procedurally, for her right to come back to the board? Does it impede her right to come back to the board?
No,
It doesn't,
no.
her time?
I mean, we have actually 60 days to make a decision, okay? So we're saying in a motion that we will table this for whatever period of time. I think we need a time to go with that. What's a reasonable time, would you say, Jessica?
We could get it in a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks?
Yeah. My only concern, and I will just voice this now because I don't know the law and I don't have it in front of me and my boss isn't here, is with the is there a statute for collecting additional information after a session has already been held? I just wanna make sure that I'm following.
I
I don't know.
I don't know that answer.
We've tabled before over the
Okay.
years, so.
If we
I
can,
mean, I guess to that point, is it specific to this issue, or
Specific to,
bringing other types of information to the table to open up the can of
depends on what
worms?
you want for the motion, but I would say for additional research, we already kind of know what we are looking for. But, I don't know, could there be something more, I guess, or you can make it specific? I don't know. Whatever you want to, the more specific the motion is, the better we're gonna be.
may I say something? I have to tell you that one of the reasons that I'm here is because many of the other landowners are elderly and didn't feel that they could come. So they didn't file appeals, but I'm here on their behalf as well. We're very concerned about this $250,000 base rate. It doesn't appear to be any basis for it. And I haven't heard anything yet that's told me that that's accurate. So that,
Yeah, here's what I think. I think that, you know, I think 250's high, right? But we can't prove that for you. You know, I think that the town is doing, I think it's tough to be in the town's position to go around and do all these appraisals, and they've got a method that meets the standards, and their job's hard too, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, you've got the reassessment that is, a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people when prices have gone through the roof, and there's not a lot of sales, and unfortunately, the way this is set up is that, you know, you have to show us what the value is or come to some sort of conclusion on what it is and why, and, you know, we can't just go on I can't just vote on my gut instinct that 250 is high, you know, I need to see something. You know, the
So
town doesn't have, you don't have the data, the town doesn't have the data, what do we do? You know, I think, that- I don't think, I don't think they're being malicious in their evaluation, and I think they're trying to be as consistent as they can be. And, yeah, you know, a base rate of 800,000 on Long Lake seems crazy to me. I mean, I wouldn't even pay 125,000 for an acre in Buxton, so you know, but that's just me. But, you know, living on it is a body of water, it is Maine. Yes, it is, you know, a small body of water. Yes, you've demonstrated it's 20 feet, you know, children can't swim there. You've said in your report that the water quality is going down, and, you know, there is some data that shows that the market is, things are stale, right? But, you know, that could be for many reasons. A lot of people, you know, it is noteworthy nonetheless. You know, people might be overpriced, maybe not as desirable, and a lot of people like are just kind of sick of the frenzy of 2021, 2022, and are holding out. And you know, the market's kind of sticky right now. Hasn't fallen, so it's still high, but you know, it is on your,
Okay.
it was on your,
Yeah.
the burden's on you to show us what the value is and why. And I haven't seen that, and I know you're in a hard position to do that, it's hard for you to do that. You have to hire a professional, I think.
But how are they going to do it without
There's
saying
ways,
Sue?
there's just ways to do it, they have to do it. It's a complex assignment.
And the thing is, if they do an appraisal now, it is not gonna reflect what was 2 years ago.
They can do it as of a date,
I'm sorry?
they can do an appraisal as of a date.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're an appraiser, you know these things I don't know.
Right. Right, it just, that's my thought on the thing, I mean, I don't, you know, that's, I'll leave it at that, I think you can defer,
Timeline.
infer.
Yep.
I feel your position, I do, it's
See,
tough.
seems to me they have to prove what they're basing it on too.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be me having to prove what my property,
Right, but they have the ability to go off macro data, you know? So, and then wiggle their way into certain pockets of the market. That's it's the only way,
Okay, do-
you know?
Yeah, she said, she don't know any reason we can't, do it like for 30 days.
I would do 30
And
days.
then you come back and bring us whatever other information. And we'll see what we can do. We're trying to help, but we have limits
appreciate that.
on what we can do too. And I hear what you're saying. Also, I hear you're kind of the spokesperson for the elderly, okay? And that's nice, but we can't do anything about that, okay? So,
no. And the only reason I mention that is because I'd like to be able to go back and say, they arrived at 250,000 with this information, and it's not there. The market data is not there,
well.
as far as I can see.
That's your opinion, and I appreciate that. But we have same opinion from the appraisal company saying it is, based on what they could find, what they're going to use, whether we agree with that or not, okay? And then there's a whole nother issue, and I'm sure with the other folks that you've talked to, is the amount of taxes that this then has raised, which unfortunately doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing. That's the town. They decide that with their mill rates and whatever. Their job is, and asked us to figure out what the market value is, basically proportionate for the town, and then the town figures out whether they raise the mill rate, lower the mill rate, whatever they need to run the town. So I can appreciate their feelings, thinking, Jesus, you're jacking up my taxes. Well, unfortunately, that's the effect of that. But we can't do anything about that. So, we've got a motion from Peter. You wanna read?
Yeah, sure.
Whatever it is.
I'll move that the application from Connie Allen, 46 Island Pond Road, Harrison, property tax map 59, lot 17, be tabled to allow the town of Harrison's assessor's agent time to review the file to determine additional factors that would affect valuation for a period not to extend 30 days from today's date.
Second.
Seconded by Alex. Other comment? Sounds realistic. Hopefully you're not planning a vacation for a long period of time. You'll be able to come back.
I appreciate your being willing to go look at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If there's something that needs to be done, I wanna make sure we do it.
We do, we
Yeah.
appreciate that. And again, I don't wanna tell you how to do your job, but anything you can look at, pictures, anything you can bring us would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay?
And, are you gonna be home for the next couple weeks? Are you there for the next couple weeks, or is this a second home? I don't.
No, I live there.
Okay, do you have a phone number I can call to let you know that I'm coming?
583-6304.
6304? Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Secretary, did you get the motion?
I did. Yep, I'll
Okay.
have that sent out.
All right, and then we'll send out a notice,
Should
I
we vote on the
guess.
motion?
Huh?
Should we vote on the motion?
Oh, we did,
Yes,
sorry.
yeah.
I thought we had it already by consensus, but we better be. All in favor of the motion? Okay, unanimous, so that's what we'll do.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So thank you, we
Good luck.
appreciate it,
Appreciate it.
and thank you.
Thank you.
for-
You guys are only gonna come here for us, so you'll see me again.
We're getting to know each other pretty well.
Next time I might stay down here, it takes me an hour and 45 minutes to get here.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second,
Do we have to vote
all in
on it?
favor?
Oh,
We are adjourned.
Nice.
Good, thank you.